What up, everybody in Radio Land? It's your main man Lawrence, and we got we got Andy Argo coming back up on here.
Properly introduce the show.
Let's try that again. Take two.
All right. This is once a week we come on your radio dial to we call out the establishment's BS. We dig underneath the headlines, talk about what they are not talking about. We talk to activists and organizers here at the local, national, international level, and generally spit that hot truth. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM, WIDR Kalamazoo, or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may be. So, man, coming into the show, we were both like pretty heated discussion.
We got.
There's a lot to talk about this week. That's
man from debating online with people in Michigan on just the dumbest stuff. Dumb people logic, man. Dumb people logic.
We are going to be calling out some folks. Is it call in? I guess.
I don't even want to go there with them because I don't want to give them the credit they deserve for being stupid right now. But we definitely can later on my show on my show on Friday because my show on Friday is much more petty.
I think like the kernel of that is it started with Kamala Harris, and I would like to talk about that later in the show. We talked about Tulsi Gabbard last week, tried to give like kind of a good analysis of her as a candidate, her weaknesses and strengths.
Did we break down Kristen Gillibrand?
Not yet. I think we could do that in the same breath. I think why don't we start with what we were going into, and I want to kind of frame this from a local perspective, but it's been on everyone's lips and minds this last week, talking about that incident in Washington with the native elder and the racist jackass MAGA kids. And by the way, I watched the full video.
I did too.
And lo and behold,
all 2 hours, and then the other like 20 second to 15-minute videos that was shot by other people. Yeah, there was.
Yeah, and it's like if you have conservative or even some liberal friends are saying it's like if you look at it, it kind of exonerates the kids, and they're like, I watched it. No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It's like there was nothing in that video that made me think that these kids were not racist jackasses.
Okay, look. No, we're gonna be fair because we're gonna be fair and honest.
Yeah.
These were high school kids, and high school kids who are being indoctrinated by a Catholic school, so they have very conservative values because they was there at a pro-life rally that was a counter protest to a pro-choice rally, women's march rally that was going on there.
Oh, exactly.
And they had a Native American rally that was there as well. And you had some black Hebrew Israelites that was there saying some outrage, that was saying some stuff that some was savory, some was unsavory. Here's the thing, and I said this on my Facebook page. If you are going to a pro-life rally that's a counter-protest to a women's march pro-choice rally, you're wearing a MAGA hat, and you get into people's faces, you deserve all the smoke that comes to you. You are putting out in the world exactly what you want back. And if you was to get exactly what you were putting out there, then you want to call yourself the victim. It's the same thing as the white dude who grabbed the black girl over the counter at McDonald's, and the black girl gave him the hands. It's the same. It's the exact same thing. You put out in the world what you go get back.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like a lot of conservatives and even liberals I know conflate the idea of freedom of speech with The First Amendment means that the government cannot restrict your free speech. It cannot impose draconian measures on you for saying whatever it is you want. However, freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences. If you are putting some awful speech out there, then you're going to experience some awful clapback. That's,
right. Like, you're not... You have the right to wear the MAGA hat and go to that rally. You don't have a right to be liked for it.
No.
Like, you don't have a right to not be called a demon or a devil because some of the things that you're advocating for, it's some demonic stuff. Like, I'm gonna need for you to stop.
Oh, yeah. So I think I do want to. So this particular incident has been talked about a whole lot over the weekend. So I really just want to focus on some of the things that I think have been less discussed. One of them, there is a huge dimension of privilege that comes with this story. So we got this kid whose family can literally afford a PR firm to talk on their behalf. And the way that public opinion and the media has come back and say, so we joked around how, the full video exonerates them in the minds of some people. And particularly, this is a lot of the media, even like the left-leaning corporate media, has come out and retracted their original statements based on this full video and based on what this PR firm had to say. Now, obviously, our perspective, we're like, one, that's incorrect. I think this, again, one of the things we do on the show a lot is criticize establishment journalism, and they really dropped the ball on this one. They should, again, believe the evidence of your eyes and ears. That video, yes, the full context of it, you had Black Israelites, you had, they didn't necessarily seek the indigenous march. It was more Nathan Phillips coming in trying to be an intermediary. But those kids were still acting like little racist goons.
No. Also, let's not forget that there's a video out there of girls walking by some of these kids, and they're yelling at the girls, build a wall and make America great again. And while in one of the other videos, you had a bunch of the kids yelling out some horrific stuff about rape, saying that that it's not rape if she enjoys it. That's what some of these privileged white kids who are the victims in this situation was doing. Mm-hmm. They were acting like there's this whole thing about the 10-year challenge or 20-year challenge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They were acting like little Brett Kavanaughs. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what they were doing. Yeah. And the thing that made me upset watching it is, look at the framing. You have white privileged kids. There's some white kids jeering and staring down a Native American who's trying to send a prayer of peace to de-escalate the situation. Even if they don't understand that, okay, that's fine. But they did not respect his space. They were not respecting. They did not treat him as another human being. They were treating him as an other. Mm-hmm. And juxtapose that to a couple years ago. What happened when you saw people who did not treat Native Americans like they were humans at DAPL?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're not course correcting the ideas of seeing humanity in other people, and that's the problem that I have in the story. Now, were the Black Israelites probably saying some horrific stuff? Probably. Mm-hmm. But name me any rally that has MAGA hats and a bunch of people who support Trump, and name me one rally where they're not saying horrific or racist things, or they're not doing horrific things. On top of that, that's a Catholic school. You're supposed to follow the doctrines of Christ. Do you think Christ would have did any of the stuff that those kids were doing? Where was the adults to show them that you should supposed to be treating these other people with humanity? That's the problem that we're the nuance that we're having, and the fact that they went on CNN, like the main kid who was staring down the veteran Navajo.
His last name is like it's
I think it's Daniels or David or I forgot his name.
His last name, it's very memorable because it's like it's an action verb. It's like to do something.
Yeah, I can't think of it. Yeah. But think about this. Think about the framing. They let him go on CNN or on mainstream media and let him defame this innocence as he was staring down this older man like he was about to square off in an MMA fight. Yep. Mm-hmm. And also, quick role reversal. If there was a bunch of black kids that had F Donald Trump shirts on and they were acting like those kids and they surrounded a Danish troupe that were playing music or something, or a Norwegian troupe playing music, and they surrounded them. How do you think
even like, let's say like people from a bunch of southern states or
let's say some Mormons or some Scientologist kids.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think the media would have played that up? Seriously, let's be honest. How would the media react if that role was reversed and it was a bunch of black kids in F Donald Trump shirts?
I mean, I think what it gets to the root of is when we talk about privilege, it's like the fact that these kids, despite very obvious evidence, are able to go back and kind of gaslight and like make you doubt the evidence of your own eyes and ears through PR, through pressuring the establishment media, and the same thing does not happen to people who are not white. Think of any video. Think of any video that's come out where they character assassinate people like Trayvon Martin,
Laquan McDonald, man.
McDonald, yeah.
The case with Laquan McDonald. I know we're going to talk about it later today, about the 3 officers that got acquitted, but the one officer that did kill him was only getting 6 years and some change. But like, look at what they said about Laquan McDonald, Philando Castile, any of the young Crawford in Ohio who got shot in a Walmart. Like, they character assassinate anyone who is not of privilege, but they want to protect those that they see themselves in.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because they would literally call any other group of kids that were doing that hoodlums, thugs, whatever. But when those kids are actually acting like hoodlums and thugs, they're just boys being boys. That is the normalization of trauma. That is that we were been talking about toxic masculinity. When we talked about the Gillette commercial, all the things that the Gillette commercial was talking about, we saw display in those videos.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to really sum it up, it's that is when we talk about systemic racism in our country, cultural racism. That's the matter of the fact. A black person gets murdered by the police, and the media will do everything they can to figure out to justify the police's action. Some white kids get caught on tape harassing a Native man with obvious racist cajoling, and they get invited on the Today Show, the White House, etc., to give their side of the story.
Hold on, wait. They are really getting invited to the White House?
Yes, they are getting invited. Yes, that is really happening. They're getting invited to the White House.
Are you kidding me?
Because all of these liberals have been harassing them so much for.
Doug, are you kidding? No. Hold on now. James saw.
Is it really surprising?
No.
Who the president is.
No, right? I just want to know, because I just want to juxtapose. You remember that dude that stopped the mass shooter at the Waffle House? He got shot in the shot in the arm. Yep. James Saul Jr. He got shot in the arm and raised money for the victims of the mass shooting. He didn't get invited to the White House.
No,
he's an actual literal hero. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Here's the thing. I want them to be invited to the White House. I want them to be invited to the White House, and I want them to get burgers and fries, just like the Klansmen. I want them to get McDonald's. I want them to get just like they treated the Klansmen football team.
I am going to pay attention to that because Trump's got a hotel right down the street with a 5-star kitchen. So if they serve these kids steaks, I'm gonna.
Dog.
So
if they are going to serve they are going to serve these kids. I guarantee you, they're going to serve these kids filet mignon, shrimp, and they're literally going to get that as they were being the biggest jerks on like they were doing what their ancestors did to Native Americans at the beginning of the colonization of this country. And again, that's the other framing. They're jeering and mocking and trying to intimidate a Native American. The Native American people are the only people in America that could look at black people when black people say, "Dog, we've been systematically oppressed forever." And Native Americans can be like, "Hold my beer." Like they're the only ones who can say, "Hold my beer" to black folks. Like come on, man.
So you know, like I wanted to kind of use this to trampoline or jump onto a local story because it boils down to some of the very same roots of the story that we were just talking about. It really ties together in an elegant way because this story is about Paw Paw. The ACLU filed a complaint against Paw Paw schools for having a racially hostile environment. And I'm going to read a few bits from the article, and then me and Lawrence, I think I want to talk about how this kind of ties into this Covington Catholic school issue. Basically, what they said is that the ACLU and other nonprofit orgs offered to help the district address pervasive bigotry. All children should be able to attend school without having to endure racial discrimination and harassment, said Mark Fancher, ACLU of Michigan's Racial Justice Project staff attorney. Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed of a day when children of all races, colors, and creeds would be able to join hands as brothers and sisters. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
Okay.
So the examples that the ACLU cited from the school included one student complaining, other students said after the election, "Trump's in the house, go back to Mexico, go back to your country now and pick blueberries." In other examples cited by the ACLU, people were called racial slurs, including a common slur used against black people and quote-unquote dirty Mexican. In another example, students placed a swastika and a small Hitler figurine in the basket of a student's model hot air balloon science project, the ACLU said. The incidents of bullying and harassment are usually dealt with individually, but a persistent and widespread problem, such as the one at Paw Paw, needs a different approach, the ACLU said. They also cited the School Board of Education's vote in 2017 to reinstate the Redskins mascot. Before we get back into tying this to Covington and have a broader discussion, here's what Paw Paw had to say. The district denies the ACLU's allegations and is disappointed that the ACLU made such claims without conducting sufficient and objective research, Lark said. Lark is the Paw Paw Public Schools Superintendent, Sonia Lark. In the past 3 years, district administration received only a handful of race-based harassment claims, each of which the district promptly and effectively addressed. Contrary to the allegations in the ACLU's complaint, district staff and administration worked tirelessly to promote diversity and to encourage cultural sensitivity, said the superintendent of a school district that still has Redskins as a mascot. So, yeah. So here's the thing. Originally I didn't necessarily want to talk about the Covington story because some of it ties into how we pick up these stories that kind of the media picks up stories that are kind of manufactured to elicit outrage from one group or another. Good examples being the Gillette razor thing was really only a handful of incel men online talking about it. Media picks it up as there's a huge backlash against Gillette. And then it kind of snowballs to the point where actual reactionary right-wing organizations comment on it, like the NRA, or vice versa. There aren't really that many Christians who are mad about the Starbucks coffee cups, but outlets like Fox News will pick it up and, basically to kind of, manufacture these big outrage stories. However, the Covington story, I really think gets to the soul of a problem that's pervasive here in America. And, we talked about it a little bit back and forth online before we came on the show, is this idea of, I'd say like the main difference between the people who wear MAGA hats and the people who used to wear white hoods is there's this lack of self-awareness. There's this idea, they legitimately think that this obviously racist stuff that they do and portray and live is not racist. Covington.
What it is racist adjacent. It's the same reason why the Republican Party didn't have a problem with Steve King for the longest time. They wasn't mad that Steve King was racist. He was a representative in Ohio, and he has a Confederate battle flag. Forgetting the fact that Iowa was a part of the Union. Like, they wasn't mad at the racist policies that he put out there. They wasn't mad about his racism when it came to the way he voted, but they were mad that he talked about it blatantly. The MAGA hat is a way that they can still have that blatant in your face, what are you going to do about it type of attitude, forgetting the fact that the self-awareness that you're talking about is that the reason why they wore masks and hoods is because they realized that they still have to live in the communities of the people that they're trying to keep in line. So if we see your face, we can do something about it.
And I should clarify, like, not all of the MAGA racist types. Some of them are self-aware, and they either are overt about it, people like Richard Spencer, or they're legit racist, but they can use this kind of, that's not racist line of logic as cover. I can't speak to what the superintendent is doing over at Paw Paw, but, as somebody like, I've been to some of the protests against their mascot. The people over there, they legit, don't understand it. They will, they say, it's part of our heritage. It's this and that. And you explain to them again, this is directly insulting to native peoples. Kind of like how, the Covington, there's this incident that's popping up in photography of them, basically taunting the opposing basketball team by wearing literal blackface. And
it's the cognitive ignorance of the history of America. Because I know we're going to talk about it. I know we're going to talk about Martin Luther King, because we got to speak about Martin Luther King and how Mike Pence tried to compare Donald Trump to Martin Luther King. It's that same cognitive ignorance. It's the same way that Republicans tried to whitewash King so they could use them to push propaganda. When he literally policies literally stand against everything that they talk about. And it's the same thing. You cannot, within the same breath, say I have a right to lord over over you other people, as in it's a part of my heritage, it's what I'm used to, and not understand that what you are used to hurt and disenfranchise and or dehumanize other people. It's the same thing when I see 70-something-year-olds say, well, you young millennials are very sensitive. Back in my day, we weren't that sensitive. Back in your day, if a black person drunk at a white only drinking fountain, y'all was gonna burn down the whole city. So I mean, if you don't get you
talk about snowflakes,
right? If you don't get your selective outrage ass on somewhere, like for real, the thing is, and that what makes it upsetting, especially in Paw Paw, is that Paw Paw fails to realize, just like how the NFL also fails to realize, the Chiefs and the Redskins, that not only are you still not only are you perpetuating white supremacy and patriarchy in our country, you are also dehumanizing a group of people who literally still are getting their land stolen from them, their water being poisoned, that we are still acting as if it's the norm to dehumanize and subjugate people. And to push that as normality. We are normalizing trauma. And we do not, and instead of getting mad at the abuse, You want to get mad at the reaction to the abuse.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting to me is like something that both Paw Paw and Covington are doing is they are decoupling an obvious example of like their systemic racism, sexism, patriarchy with what the individual actions of the student body. You know, they said like, oh, no, these are just individual individual bad actions done by our students. They're isolated incidents. We're shocked and appalled that ACLU would be investigating them. However, here's the thing that they really do with the whole Redskins mascot name. They have legitimately made themselves adversarial to a class of people who have come into their town and been like, we are the native folks. We do not like this. That is going to foster a culture, in a district that is predominantly white student body. That is going to foster an acceptability to this kind of rhetoric that extends out. And, they try to plant their flag. It's like, this is just about the name. It's about nothing else. However, Covington sent a bunch of students there. Ostensibly, their mission, should they choose to accept it, which they did, was, go counter-demonstrate a pro-choice rally. All of a sudden, you've got them engaging with the black Israelites. You've got them cornering a native indigenous protester while chanting "Build the Wall," which again has nothing to do with either of those racial groups, but you're tying it all together. You're making all these forms of racial bigotry acceptable, and you can, again, you disassociate the things, you hide behind it, and you say, you either defend their actions as not being racist, or you say, oh no, these are just individual bad actions, and there is no systemic link between how our school district operates and the actions of these children.
The problem is that you're reinforcing the actions of the children. If the behavior is not being course corrected, what you're saying is that what they're doing is perfectly fine in your eyes. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you did not have that there wasn't any parents there wasn't any mentors there wasn't anybody that could grab these kids and be like, yo, what are you doing? Back up, give them 50 feet. There was none of that.
The parents were basically encouraging the behavior. The parents were on the ground at the Washington D.C. incident. Man.
Look. I don't have a problem with you wanting to chant or have school chants, and you're using your school chants to drown out something that someone else is saying. You have a right to do so. That's your free speech. I do have a problem when you try to play victim when you go too far. Mm-hmm. If you are a Christian, you're supposed to be able to accept the fact, accept the wrongdoing that you do, so you can repent and be better. They're not trying to do that.
No, not at all.
That's the issue. That's one of the issues that I have, and that's the last thing that I gotta say. You want to use Christian values when it suits your political needs, but when it comes to actually living by the words of the Christ, you would scar and jeer him if he was here right in front of you. So let's put this in perspective. You ain't really walking what you talking. But yeah.
All right. So I think with that, why don't we take a little break? We're gonna move on to a new topic. I think maybe next, did we want to dive into? MLK Day just happened. We definitely want to talk about that.
Yeah, let me speak on that real quick, because Reverend Barber, if you haven't seen Democracy Now, or if you have not seen Roland Martin Unfiltered, if you have not seen what Reverend Barber did when his state representative, who's a Republican, was at the MLK service, and Reverend Barber called the Republican out by saying, you can't say that you love Dr. Martin Luther King and then push policies that will go against everything that he stood for. If you have not seen that video, it is some of the most amazing shade because he got the entire audience to stand up.
Yeah.
If you do not know who Reverend Barber is, Reverend Barber,
he makes me wonder if reincarnation is a thing.
No, dog. He is.
Oh man,
he
MLK
is.
came back.
Man, okay. So if you don't know anything about Reverend Barber has reignited the Poor People's Campaign. He went and did civil disobedience. Him and other clergymen went to Washington, marched on to Washington, and was talking about the redistribution of wealth. Basically, they're going forward with Dr. Martin Luther King's social, economic, and just equality, justice policies. And he had a service. He did. They did a Martin Luther King memorial service where they talked about his life and the actual radical nature of Dr. Martin Luther King, not the whitewash version, not the version that Mike Pence tried to use, which I want to talk about. They talked about how he talked about automation and how automation can decimate the American working class, and how we need something like universal basic income to and this was back in 1964. He was saying this. He was talking about how we need universal basic income. He was talking about how we need Medicare for all, how we need affordable housing, universal free college and tuition. He was talking about these democratic socialist policies, and talking about, you can't say you represent MLK. You can't say that you love Martin Luther King, and you literally fight not only against his policy but his actual legacy of things that he actually advocated for. So and you cannot be
so Lawrence, can we just put a pin in that real quick? It's like go to break and then like continue talking about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So y'all, we're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
You're listening to WIBR FM, and this is your boy, Kill Mitchell. Yeah, that's right, the Good Burger guy, the Orange Soda guy. I do. Ooh. New movie coming out, WIBR FM. Y'all got to check it out. It's Kill.
Attention, wider listeners.
Here at Wider FM, we care about everyone's safety. Please do your part in keeping the roadways safe by staying focused on the road and not driving distractedly. Thank you for listening and driving safely.
Hey, y'all. We are back. So, if you're just joining us, coming back from the break, so we wanted to talk a little bit about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Of course, it was Martin Luther King's day on Monday, and what we were just talking about before we went to our little break is kind of the hypocrisy of a lot of modern politicians in how they kind of co-opt the King legacy and try to whitewash it and sanitize it when at his core, you know, Martin Luther King was he was an anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist radical. And especially at the time he was. So we're actually going to play that clip because, you know, Reverend Barber had some awesome stuff to say. Yeah. And I want to read a quick little quote. This is... I posted this the other day from a guy whose Twitter handle is Bay Guevara. And he said, "Let's cut the BS. If MLK were alive today, he'd be treated the same way he was then. Hated by conservatives, shunned by liberals, and surveilled by the state. People like Obama, Hillary, and Kamala would be the first in line to criticize MLK's anti-war positions as a threat to the safety of the United States. I can almost hear them browbeating him." And
absolutely true. True story.
And of course, even like, you know, there's certainly more problematic people who try to, co-opt Martin Luther King. Yes, here are the big three for me. Mike Pence coming out and saying that, you know, Donald Trump's policy was a continuation of MLK's legacy. Just make me vomit in a damn bucket.
Oh, dog! It wasn't just him. Like, you had
the FBI.
The FBI who sent Martin Luther King a letter saying you should kill yourself because we know what you've been doing. I was sitting here. I was like, I know. Y'all are the last people.
They should know about MLK's legacy. They still have the telephone transcripts.
No. But the third one that pissed me off the other day was the NRA.
Oh,
did you see how the NRA tried to sell guns off the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King?
Oh,
now here's the thing. To set up this clip. Dr. Barber's at a King Memorial thing, like I was talking about before we went on a break, and the governor of his state and Republican representatives is the governor and some senators and government representatives that are there at the memorial service. He puts them on blast, folks. This is we're getting this from Roland Martin Unfiltered. If you haven't seen Roland Martin Unfiltered, you're missing out on some really good stuff from a productive black perspective. But yeah, the clip is a sample off of that, and what Reverend Barber says, he puts it in perspective. So yeah.
So politicians can't say they love Dr. King and how he stood for love and unity, but then you deny and refuse to support his agenda. Right, Governor? I mean, since you came, right, Congressman? So, let me show you what I mean, Governor. Dr. King would not have been for a wall. And how many of y'all are not against a wall? Everybody here that's not against the wall, politicians, everybody, and will tell Donald Trump, you don't need to be building a wall to separate people. We need to be spending money to give people health care. Stand on your feet. Now, anybody that doesn't stand on your feet, you get the seat. Wait a minute. How many folk in here believe, like Dr. King, that everybody ought to have what Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, asked for 100 years ago, and that's health care for every citizen? Everybody believes that. Stand up. Now, if you can't stand up for that, then don't say you love Dr. King. You may be seated. I'm just saying, I'm too old to play now. Don't just think I'm talking to politicians. Just because you can talk about it from the pulpit, but then I'm going to say it like I feel it. They can find you for your pastor's anniversary, but they can't find you in the street with these students and these other folk fighting for injustice. If you are a preacher of the gospel and you are asking your people to tithe, but you are not fighting for them to have a living wage, you are lying.
That's what I'm saying. Go on, Fred. All right, folks.
All right. Oh, that was hot fire. That's
what you mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is the fierce urgency of now.
Yeah.
That is not taking the tranquilizing drug of gradualism.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly what MLK would have stood for.
Exactly.
When it comes to the righteous indignation of actually talking about the issues that affects our lives. Trump is, and the fact that Martin Luther King Jr.'s the third came out and said, my father built bridges. He didn't build walls. My father built communities. He didn't allow them to be poisoned. My father fought for the people. He didn't divide us. He wasn't the one that was dividing. He was uniting. And to paraphrase one of the philosophies of Martin Luther King, which is something that I talk about all the time, and I want to also talk about the Women's March as well, because I have to speak on how they are smearing my black queen, the leadership. We got to talk about that.
This. Yeah.
We fight systems, as to paraphrase Martin Luther King, we fight systems of oppression. We have debates and arguments with people who we disagree with. Now, because you have to remember, SNCC, the Black Panthers, MLK, the Nation of Islam, Martin Luther King and his coalition, they all still sat in the same room together. They still planned organized together.
And honestly, that is a lesson that the modern left really needs to take in, man.
But they had fierce arguments.
Yeah.
They had fierce arguments. Fannie Lou Hamer and others did not always agree with Martin. But they united under the common principle that our policies and our goals is what we unite for. We may take different paths to get to equality, but we are trying to meet each other there. And that is the problem that I see with the modern Democratic Party, because those that are in power want to keep their power more than serving the will of the people. Why do you think they keep coming after AOC? And I said it on my Facebook, and I said it on my Facebook page. Dog, they gonna keep going after AOC, and when she hit 35, she gonna be president.
Oh, probably at this rate. I say just, as long as if Fox News just keeps covering her like they are,
it's not just Fox, man,
and everybody else. Yeah.
Dog, everybody keep coming. I'm like, dog, y'all don't want to. Her and Cardi B, like those. Don't.
Is there a running mate?
Brooklyn,
yeah.
There's some Bronx women. There's some Bronx women that you don't want to mess with. AOC and Cardi is not. Ask Tommy Lahren how she felt coming out. So, but here's the thing. Just bring it back about MLK. Remember, after he came out against Vietnam and he called the America the number one state sponsor of terrorism, his poll ratings was in the 30s and in the teens.
Mm-hmm.
The New York Times and the New York Times, Washington Times, all the establishment papers and the Democratic Party hated him. LBJ, after the 1964 Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act, said and was quoted that I gave this N-word everything he wanted. Why will he not stop? Because he was fighting for fair housing. Because the Fair Housing Act didn't come until 1971. King's legacy, and this is the thing that people keep forgetting. it wasn't that he died. He got murdered. He got murdered fighting for the ending of wars overseas, the ending of the illegal war that we were in, the ending of eradication of poverty, and he was going to go fight and protest for the sanitation workers when he was shot and killed, when he was assassinated. The problem that I am having with a lot of the depictions of Martin Luther King, especially from the NRA, especially from the NRA and the FBI, and especially when the FBI came out on Tucker Carlson's show, talks about how they disenfranchise progressives in government and progressive groups like MLK's. We forget that the things that he was talking about are the same things that Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ro Khanna, Tulsi Gabbard, a bunch of actual progressives have been fighting for, and they were jeered. They are hated. Mainstream media don't like them. But the people do. That should tell you something.
Exactly.
That should tell you a lot about who's actually on our side. It should tell you a lot about who's actually fighting for us. And Mike Pence, and this is just the last thing I'm going to say about Mike Pence. Mike Pence, your wife is teaching it's not even about your wife. Mike Pence, you are a spineless coward because you see our country in the shape that it's in, and you're choosing to do nothing. You're choosing to do absolutely nothing. You're choosing to let it play out instead of actually speaking out. Because the things that's going on doesn't negatively affect him. He doesn't. He's like the average Republican. It does not affect me. I don't care. So this government shutdown doesn't affect me. I don't care.
Yeah, no, really, and I think we'll probably talk a little bit more about the shutdown later in the show. I think I want to read a little bit from this article, close out the King discussion, and then we'll move on to a new topic at 7. So. This is from an article that Dr. Cornel West wrote and published in The Guardian last year.
I love Dr. Cornel West.
Oh, yeah.
He's amazing, man.
And this was to coincide with the 50th anniversary of his assassination. So it was published on April 4th, 2018. I'll just read a little bit from this, and then we'll go to break. We now expect the depressing spectacle every January of King's quote-unquote fans giving us the sanitized versions of his life. We now come to the 50th anniversary of his assassination, and we once again are met with sterilized versions of his legacy. A radical man deeply hated and held in contempt is recast as if he was a universally loved moderate. These neoliberal revisionists thrive on the spectacle of their smartness and the visibility of their mainstream status, yet rarely, if ever, have they said a mumbling word about what would have concerned King, such as U.S. drone strikes, house raids, and torture sites, or raise their voices about escalating inequality, poverty, or Wall Street domination under neoliberal administrations, be the president white or black. The police killing of Stephon Clark in Sacramento may stir them, but the imperial massacres in Yemen, Libya, or Gaza leave them cold. Why? Because so many of King's quote-unquote fans are afraid. Yet one of King's favorite sayings was, "I would rather be dead than afraid." Why are they afraid? Because they fear for their careers in and an acceptance by the neoliberal establishment. Yet King said angrily, "What you're saying may get you a foundation grant, but it won't get you into the kingdom of truth." The neoliberal soul craft of our day shuns integrity, honesty, and courage, and rewards venality, hypocrisy, and cowardice. To be successful is to forge a non-threatening image, sustain one's brand, expand one's pecuniary network, and maintain a distance from critiques of Wall Street neoliberal leaders, and especially the Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands and peoples. The killing of Martin Luther King Jr. was the ultimate result of the fusion of ugly white supremacist elites in the U.S. government and citizenry and cowardly liberal careerists who feared King's radical moves against empire, capitalism, and white supremacy. If King were alive today, his words and witness against drone strikes, invasions, occupations, police murders, caste in Asia, Roma oppression in Europe, as well as capitalist wealth, inequality, and poverty would threaten most of those who now sing his praises. As he rightly predicted, I am nevertheless greatly saddened that the inquiries have not really known me, my commitment, or my calling. All right, so with that, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we got a lot more to talk about on the show tonight. Y'all listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
I hated the Colonel with his wee beady eyes and that smug look on his face. Oh, you're gonna buy my chicken. Oh.
89.1 FM, WIDR.
Dad, how can you hate the Colonel? Because he puts an addictive chemical in his chicken that makes you crave it fortnightly, smart-ass.
Kalamazoo.
Stay tuned for Wider's weekly RSO Spotlight on WIDR Kalamazoo.
A Moment of Magic WMU is a chapter of national nonprofit that offers creative programming to children with pediatric cancer and other medical vulnerabilities. They operate on the mission of believing in magic at a time when a child needs to just be a kid and reminding them to be brave, strong, and fearless. The most popular service they offer to make this magic happen is providing character visits with the world's most famous fairy tale characters. If you are an undergraduate college student and interested in joining, meetings happen on Thursdays from 7 to 8:30 p.m. in room 105 to 107 of the Bernhard Center. Their social media is AMOMWMU and their email is AMOMWMU@gmail.com for more information.
This has been our weekly RSO Spotlight on WIDR Kalamazoo. For more information on how to spotlight your RSO, head to WIDRFM.org.
Hey y'all, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. So, I think we're gonna do, and this will probably be an evolving segment as we get on in the primary in a little bit. We want to talk about some more of the recently announced candidates. Last week we kind of went in depth talking about Tulsi Gabbard, but first, let's talk about some lighter news. This story tickled me over the week. Yeah, you go ahead and you lead off. Okay, Lawrence.
Okay, so let's talk about something. Let's talk about something funny. Over the weekend, for some of y'all probably saw. Tommy Lahren went after Cardi B because Cardi B made a video talking about the government shutdown. That was when we broke the record for the longest government shutdown. Cardi B decided to talk about it because she says, B word, I'm scared. like she kept it real. This is the thing. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Cardi B's music, but I do listen to it and dance to it when I'm at the club. I'm not gonna lie, it's amazing and it's wonderful. But here's the thing: when Cardi keeps it real, she keeps it real. You feel the authenticity dripping off of every syllable that's coming off of that's coming out of her mouth. And when she talked about the government shutdown, and she was like, "Okay,
that was beautiful."
It was absolutely hilarious. Yeah. It was hilarious, and it was true. Like that's the thing that's the thing that made it. I was like, it's funny and it was true. The thing is that Tommy Lahren didn't like the fact that Cardi B was
Tammy.
Tammy, Tony Lahren, Tommy Lahren. So after the video. So after the video, see, here's the thing. Tommy, this is a pattern that the right wing does. So it's not just Tommy, Candace Owens and others. To keep their name in the popular sphere, they will troll people.
Yeah. Usually high-profile figures.
Yeah, they will troll high-profile figures to keep themselves being relevant.
Yeah. This might be why Ben Shapiro keeps going after AOC. Although he might have kind of a crush, I don't know.
Look. No, here's the thing. Ben Shapiro has been an incel. His wife has made him an incel for the last 10 years. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like Ben Shapiro ain't seen. He ain't got none since Ren and Stimpy's been on TV. Like,
by the way, that joke I just made. So one of my favorite memes that is traveling around. It's like a picture of him like doing a YouTube video, and like the edited subtitle is, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says she stands for equal opportunity, but she has turned me down for a date several times. Hashtag leftist hypocrisy.
Ben over there talking about just a small time boy. So that's what Ben's over there doing. Yeah. Like he's trying. I'm trying to tell you, he's been an incel since Rocco's Modern Life was on TV. Yeah. I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah. That's it. Right, so back to this.
So Tommy decides to tweet at Cardi after the video, and she's like, "Looks like at Cardi B." Is the latest genius political mind to endorse the Democrats. Ha ha. Keep it up, guys. MAGA 2020. So Cardi responds, "Leave me alone. I will dog walk you." So Tommy does respond back. He says, "I'm sure you would. Still, it doesn't make your political ramblings any less moronic. Hashtag build a wall." So Cardi responds, "You're so blinded with racism that you don't realize the decisions that your president you're rooting for is destroying the country you claim you love. You are the perfect example on no matter how educated or smart you think you are still a sheep."
Man, that is actually some pretty deep stuff. And, before we talk about candidates, like, I'd like to take a moment and, you finish up talking about this, but, like, I want to kind of expand on that a little bit. But you go ahead, Lawrence. Yeah.
No, it's one, here's the thing. One, that's beautifully written. Two, I don't know if Cardi wrote that, but I don't care. That's beautifully written. Three, Cardi probably did write that because Cardi writes her own bars. But but the thing that makes me laugh is that we know, if you've seen the beef between Nicki and Cardi will roll up on Tommy. She will roll up on Tommy, and Tommy doesn't want that smoke. No. Tommy does not want that smoke from this girl from the Bronx. Like y'all, like we said earlier in the show, you better leave these women from the Bronx alone. This is not the time. This is not the year to trifle with women of color.
Yeah, it's like not Cardi B is not Bernie Sanders or some like liberal talking head. Like, she sees you in public. It's like, yo, alt-right Barbie, come over here.
Right. What did you say on Twitter? Like, it's like, that's the thing. Cardi, Remy Ma, these are not like, when it comes to hip hop women, jazz rapper, official. These are not women that you want to roll up on like you crazy. Cause they will beat you down in real life.
Yeah.
For real. Like, this is not, that's not what you want to do.
No.
But anyway, a dude on Twitter named White Bread responds in this conversation. Somebody responds and says, are you gonna pay for my insurance? The dude named White Bread. Are you gonna pay for my insurance? And do I get to pick my own doctor?
Oh,
Cardi
I love this one.
Cardi responds, I pay $4 million in taxes this year, so most likely I am paying for your insurance. That's if your favorite president doesn't take my tax money for his wall, Mr. White Bread. I'm sitting there like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then AOC actually does respond. She said, AOC actually does respond, and I'm paraphrasing. She says, why do these people keep coming after the women from the Bronx? Like, we have not perfected the clapback since the Sugar Hill Gang.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. Again, this story is it's not a real story. It's a Twitter beef. Yeah. But at the same time, it shows you how delusional one side can be when we are talking about a logical issue, a real issue.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? The shutdown, for those who do not understand, the shutdown is not only it has furloughed thousands of federal employees, but safety inspectors, food safety inspectors, air safety inspectors,
border security,
the FBI. Yeah. There are FBI agents who are working on sex trafficking in children and children abductions that are literally being fired, not being paid. So the idea that we are literally making our country unsafe, and these things are not easily fixed when the government shut down. It's not like you can rebuy your family heirlooms if you had to sell them to pay rent. It's not like we didn't have a food epidemic that literally killed people last year. We have safety inspectors when it comes to airlines. People are going to be flying. I'm going to be flying, hopefully in March and in a couple other months. But those planes are probably going to be unsafe, and that's putting hundreds of lives, thousands of lives in danger. So this shutdown, it's not, and the people who are being forced to go back to work without being paid. Like, come on, man. Like, it's not something that we need to joke about. It's not something that needs to be trivialized. But it shows you how someone like Cardi can see that it's a real issue that's affecting real people's lives. Yet you have people like Tomi Lahren, who's such a Kool-Aid drinker that she doesn't have the empathy and sympathy to realize what's going on to the average American people that she claims that she cares about.
Yeah, and like I said, I think one of the most poignant things in that whole exchange is it's like you are so blinded by your own racism that you do not, you basically can't understand what you're going on, and that struck a real chord with me because I feel like that is Trump's base, and largely any base really that is being thrown under the bus, you're chopping off your nose despite your face. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. You're chopping off your nose despite your face.
Yeah, and we see the government is shut down. The very things that you ostensibly say you stand for. So we just mentioned border security, TSA. These are the people who aren't getting paid. The services that are being run on a shoestring budget during the government shutdown, when ostensibly I thought this was all about security. I thought this was all about keeping our nation secure. It goes back to again, what is this wall really? Because like a couple steps back, we talked a little bit on the show on how, if you're talking about border security, what the Democrats have offered is pretty draconian in itself and pretty expensive, probably more expensive than what we actually need. But this wall, it has a symbolism behind it. It is a monument to white supremacy, and that is why
it's a monument to his tiny phallus. That's what it is. He wants something that he can say that is tied to his administration that he can claim will protect us, but it will not. It's him trying to, because if you think about this, he had a majority in the House and the Senate and in the White House and the Supreme Court. So all levers of power are controlled by the right wing. For 2 years, same issue that we had with President Obama in his first 2 years, and the reason why we were angry because he didn't push for Medicare for all. What did he do in those 2 years? He had a booming economy. He had a booming economy if you look at the economy through the eyes of rich people. He had economic growth. He passed tax cuts for himself. He didn't do anything that his base actually wanted. He did not do anything. They killed net neutrality, which 86% of the country wanted. They deregulated the Environmental Protection Agency.
Okay, we're talking about Trump now.
Yeah, we're talking about Trump.
Yeah.
They deregulated the Environmental Protection Agency. So our streams and waters and our air is being polluted more than ever, which is adding to climate change.
He brought, the
they destroyed the consumer.
Right,
they destroyed the Consumer Protection Bureau. We have escalated drone strikes overseas, so now there's more terrorists who do not like America. We have literally escalated things, and we are literally going in a right-wing direction that's making our country less safe. But those things were not the things that his base wanted. He didn't drain the swamp. He brought the swamp to the White House.
Exactly. And
he just revealed what the swamp was, which was already there.
I think to a certain extent too, and you could say this for people who voted for Obama too, is you kind of get caught up in this afterglow, and this is why we try to say be an independent thinker. Do not, whoever you support, don't pin yourself to the two-party system, because it will inhibit your critical thinking, because you will say it's my team won, so you will kind of gloss over and ignore when either your president falls short on his promises, or observe the state of things as they are. Because it's I think even you and I I voted for Obama twice, but near the end there I was wait a minute, I feel like I've been had. And this is when I try to talk to my Trump supporting relatives and stuff, this is the thing. It's I was in a similar place. You are also being had. I want you to understand this. But there's also another very important metric in here where it's a lot of these people, drain the swamp, get border security, all this. It was tertiary to this kind of cruelty that is part of his administration. It's, I want to build this wall. I want, cruelty is part of the function. I want to starve out all of these welfare people who are quote unquote taking your money. It's this kind of unvirtuous virtue signaling that is enough to keep at least part of Trump's base on his side. I think another good example of this, and this was just yesterday, the Supreme Court gave rubber stamped and gave the okay to the transgender military ban, which again has been proven their argument against it is that it costs us too much money and it does this, what we've seen is one, it's actually going to be a disruption now because there are already transgender folks serving in the military. And the fact of the matter is, and I'm actually going to talk about when this topic came up last year, I was very blasé about it, because it's oh no, how terrible for our trans comrades, they can't become part of the military industrial complex. But it's important to understand that this isn't necessarily meant to even keeping trans folks out of the military is just tertiary to the idea that the president is following through on this campaign promise with certain elements of his base to, yes, I will treat trans people like they don't exist. I will treat trans people like they're less than human. And even now, like, you know, what's really disgusting about it is like one of my comrades who's a trans person. I do work with her in the Socialist Party. She brought up this idea that this, again, is like kind of a convenient distraction to Trump's base. You know, again, this government shutdown, the longer it goes on, even the most devoted elements of his base are having to pay attention and be like, this is going on way too long. But he's using it as red meat. Which is, again, kind of disgusting in itself by saying, like, hey, I'm going to distract you from this government shutdown by penalizing these people you want me to penalize based on their very existence.
Well, this goes back to his way of manipulating the media. A lot of times the media likes to go to shiny thing, and they don't like to talk about substance. I mean, this is the same media that gave him $5 billion in free advertisement when they was looking at his empty podium. Here's the problem. Trump's base is also being affected by the shutdown. WIC, SNAP, there's federal housing assistance, the farmer subsidies that were supposed to go out. Not just black farmers and people who voted for Trump, but a lot of the white farmers too are not going to get those subsidies. If you're thinking about your tax returns, people are that you're hoping to get back. And how a lot of those services, overwhelming majority of the country that uses those services are in red districts. So that's Trump's base that will be negatively affected next month, because there was federal workers. Like I shared a video on my Facebook page. Of federal workers saying, "Doug, if I don't pay rent by next week, I'm gonna be evicted." A lot of those people are feeling that now because of this shutdown. So the issue is, I'm going to make you feel. Remember his campaign promises. I'm going to make you feel safe. I'm the only one that can protect you. Mm-hmm. I have control of the government. I said this is going to be my shutdown. Well, you're hurting your base even more, and you're pulling same thing that you did before. You're pulling distractions to so that you can hold DACA and the wall hostage, so that you can get funding for it. Mm-hmm. And that's the issue. We have to call it for what it is. Not only is he holding the wall hostage, and that's his ransom, but he's also holding DACA hostage. That was a part of his speech earlier today. Mm-hmm. So it's like, no, we can't say that we're in a better place that we were today than we were when Obama was in office or 2 years ago. Okay. Or we talk about the State of the Union. The reason why is because if we were talking about how to actually protect our country, he's not doing so. Mm-hmm. He's harming his own country, which is also, this is the other part of it that's not being discussed. The American dollar is the standard in international currency for a lot of countries. If we can't keep our government funded and running, then those same countries that trade with us would no longer want to trade with us, which will put our economy in an economic spiral.
Yeah.
Especially since China has been flooding Africa and other countries with their money and their goods to help become another economic superpower.
And it's good you mentioned China. Like they're basically working on like this Marshall Plan style initiative for a lot of African countries, a lot of countries in like Southeast Asia. And geopolitically, it's putting us in a very vulnerable position. And granted, I'm kind of more of an internationalist, but it certainly does put us in a place where, what's funny to me is like the imperialists are really, I mean, to use the phrase again, cutting off their nose to spite their face, because the stuff that Trump is doing nothing but accelerating the process by which our empire is going to collapse. This is not going to be a unipolar world if people look at us as such an unstable, an unstable power.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did want to mention too, like something I've talked about on the last couple of shows during the shutdown is, this is more of like kind of a pessimistic analysis. What's very true is like a lot of Trump's base. Don't look at this as like, a lot of them are going to get mad at Trump for shutting down the government. In their view, Trump isn't keeping the government shut down. It's the Democrats. It's the Democrats for not building the damn wall. However, something I think an important caveat to put to that is like, that particular strategy, that does a good job of holding on to the base that Trump currently has. Does nothing to grow that base. Anybody who's not originally part of that base is going to get mad at Donald Trump. And even parts of that base that are most directly affected by the shutdown, the longer this goes on, the more and more of them are going to be like, you know what? I don't think a wall is worth this.
Well, here's the problem. This is the reason why I love Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, because Alexander Ocasio-Cortez was like, look, where's Mitch? Mitch McConnell knows that if we have a vote in the Senate, that will go through. It will go through probably 100-0. Mm-hmm. And if Trump vetoes it, it will be overridden. So Mitch McConnell's acting like a real Mitch right now. If you know hip hop slang, you know exactly what I'm saying. Mitch is acting like a Mitch. And this is why Alexander Ocasio-Cortez and the other Justice Democrats was over in the Senate like, he's not where he's supposed to be. He's not on the floor. Where's Mitch? Mm-hmm. Hashtag where's Mitch? Yep. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I would have loved if if AOC would have been like, Mitch is acting like a Mitch right now, so we're trying to find him.
No, AOC should give Cardi B like a guest pass into the Senate. And
oh my God!
Both try to hunt down Mitch McConnell.
No, they would kick Cardi out because Cardi's going to start cussing within like the first 30 seconds, and she's not going to care. And as soon as somebody tries to roll up and stop it or cut the mic off on Cardi, all hell will break loose. It will be glorious and amazing.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of close out this topic of the wall and the shutdown by highlighting some good news, a local victory that we had here in the area. You might not have heard this story from last week, so I'll just read a little bit from this article. There's a policy change. The Kent County Sheriff's Office is no longer going to honor ICE holds without an arrest warrant signed by a judge.
Yeah.
This is good news. Something similar happened here in Kalamazoo a few weeks ago, or months ago maybe at this point. Sheriff Fuller finally said we're not going to do ICE holds, and that was in large part due to the efforts of Kosecha Kalamazoo. Yeah. Kosecha GR was able to pull off a recent victory based on something really outrageous that the Kent County Sheriff's Office did. So here's what happened. For 3 days, they detained a 27-year-old U.S. citizen by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Here's the context of the story. Hilmar Gomez, a former U.S. Marine who was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I want to really emphasize that, was set to be released from Kent County Jail on December 14th when ICE instead took custody of him after giving the jail a detainment request. Ramaz Gomez was then transferred to the Calhoun County Jail for possible deportation proceedings. He was released 3 days later only after an attorney, contacted by his mother, provided citizen documentation to ICE. ICE officials previously said in a statement they issued a detainer after Gomez allegedly told them while interviewed in jail that he was a foreign national illegally present in the U.S. Yeah, sure, whatever. Gomez was lodged in jail with a Michigan driver's license in his possession, said Kent County Sheriff Michelle LaJoy Young. Now, this speaks to a couple things, and we've talked about this on the show before, how ICE has been making moves to detain and target people who are actually U.S. citizens, but maybe they have the wrong complexion.
Yeah,
and that is a scary, fascistic, draconian thing unto itself. But it also says something to both the Kent County Sheriff's Office, not only does it speak to their what's the word I'm looking for? Incompetence, but also malice, because either they are so stupid that we forgot he was a U.S. citizen even though we had his frickin' driver's license, or it speaks to this idea that they don't really care about people of U.S. citizens of Mexican descent being unjustly detained by immigration and customs enforcement.
To quote the late great Michael Jackson, all I want to say is that they don't really care about us. Mm-hmm. And as you see, you're brown. You look like a Mexican. What date is it? Is it the 15th or the 30th? I gotta make my quota.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let's wrap this up. Wrap him up.
Yep.
Zip him up. That's basically what that was. And the thing that makes it upsetting is that you're telling people who you are saying that is illegal to our country to get out, yet they are a net benefit to our country.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's insane to say people are illegal in a stolen country. Like that's can we keep it honest and 100?
No bans on stolen lands, my friend.
Right. Like come on, son. This is the reason why AOC was saying, dog, we need to get rid of ICE. Why does we need to get rid of ICE? Because they're a hammer and they think everything's a nail, and their job is being done better by border agents anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's so many layers to this story, especially if you want to really do a good leftist analysis on this. It's like, not only is it outrageous that he's U.S. citizen, but yeah, like you said, looking from a historical perspective, I mean, migration routes are way older than the frickin' borders that the colonizers drew on the damn map. So,
and also, how many times has ICE actually stopped a terrorist attack? Compared to the border, and compared to border control, compared to the actual border patrol that we have, how many times has ICE actually did something that protected the American people?
Oh yeah, that's backed up by government data.
No. The thing that's also backed up by government data, we've had 22 people die in ICE facilities. 22 die in ICE-held facilities. We have, because of Democracy Now!, quoting from Democracy Now!, more children were separated than our initial count.
Yeah,
we had 3 children die because of ICE in this administration. One died overseas because of a military operation that had gone awry. 2 died in ICE facilities that we know of.
I did want to mention, if you want to break down which government agency has foiled the most terrorism, which, by the way, it's not a huge number either. It's still the number of in total terror attacks, at least by foreign agents, is not very significant, especially compared to white nationalists. But the government agency that has foiled the most foreign terror plots is the TS who, by the way, are not getting paid right now. So,
right, and they're not getting paid right now, right?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, big props though to the ACLU filed a lawsuit, and then Cosecha Grand Rapids brought a huge amount of public attention to this. So not only did this guy get released, justice got served, but they changed the policy of the Kent County Sheriff's Department. So. Yeah, big props to them.
All right, I just want to talk. We should take a quick break.
Let's take one more break,
and then get into this last funny story. I want to talk about Rand Paul, but I do want to talk about the Women's March too.
All right, okay.
Did y'all talk about Rand Paul?
Not really. Not too much. I mean, he went to the hospital. That's funny.
Him and Charlie Kirk, because Charlie Kirk had to go to the hospital too. I also want to talk about that too, because it's hilarious.
All right. Y'all listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Hi, this is Bob Seeger, and you're listening to WIDR FM.
It may not be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in the Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Yo, we're all right. So we're back. This is a Hoodrat Strategist radio program. We got about half an hour left. We got a few more things we want to dive into. So
quick hits.
Yeah.
Quick hits before we get into big things.
Talk a little bit about leftist hypocrisy. How about right-wing hypocrisy?
All right.
Yes.
Real quick. Quick hits. Charlie Kirk had to go to the house. Charlie Kirk, who's a part of Turning Point USA, he's trash talked universal health care. He lives like a capitalist every day, Jank. And he had to go to the hospital because his back was messed up. And the hospital told him to go lay down on the bench outside because there was no beds. He had the assumption that because he had premium health care that he was going to skip the line in front of everybody else. And the hospital told him, no, go take your ass outside and lay your broke back on the bench. I thought it was hilarious because he thought his privilege was going to make him go ahead of everybody else in this free market capitalist society.
Oh, yep, no, that's not how it works, buddy.
Yeah, that's not the only funny Republican who's understanding that American health care is garbage. Rand Paul last week was caught going to Canada for hernia surgery. Now, don't get me wrong. Rand Paul's a libertarian. He's it's not that he is not standing by his libertarian values. He believes that he should take his money that is given to him by our taxpayer dollars, and he should be able to do with that money and go where he needs to go, where he sees fit. Problem is that Rand Paul believes that universal health care is slavery.
Yes, it is.
That is not a joke. That's not a punchline.
He literally said that.
That is real facts. He has literally said his argument when him and Bernie Sanders was going head to head. He called universal health care slavery, and he is going to a private hospital in Canada. Now what his publicist and everybody's been saying is, man, it's a private hospital, bruh. It's a private hospital. You know, it's a specialty hospital. It's not the same. Here's the problem. I talked about this last week on my Facebook, and people got mad at me. I got so mad that I called the hospital that he's going to, and I asked them to break down how the government healthcare breaks down for private hospitals. They told me that 85% of the funding of that hospital is government funding. The reason why is because for-profit private hospitals are illegal in Canada, so they must fall under the national healthcare standard that the Canadian healthcare gives them. So directly, he's paying out of pocket to that hospital. Indirectly, they are going to use that money to pay taxes that will then go to the universal healthcare system, that if you are Canadian, you could go to that hospital for free to get said surgery. So directly and indirectly, he is benefiting and supporting universal healthcare that he denies to his own people. Because Rand Paul voted for the GOP tax bill. The GOP tax bill knocked 4 million Americans off their health care, and 31 million Americans today do not have health care in our country. And 45,000 Americans die every year because they don't have health care. Not only, and he's a doctor. Rand Paul is a doctor. Not only is he a massive hypocrite, he is a disgusting human being for this. You are denying Americans the same type of privilege, same type of health care that Canadians benefit from, because their health care standard is what Bernie Sanders and AOC talks about. It's the same one that France has. It's the same one that Australia has. Public funding of private entities. Public funding of insurance to private entities. You are denying that to Americans, yet you go and benefit from it. If this was Ebro in the morning, I'll say congratulations, you played yourself. You will get donkey of the day for the next 3 days until I get done getting mad about this. So yeah, absolute hypocrite. Both of them just absolute hypocrites.
Hard agree. I was trying. What? I felt like there was another thing we wanted to talk about. I know we were going to talk a little bit about Kristen Gillibrand and Kamala, but I felt like there was one other thing.
We need to talk about the Women's March.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right.
We need to talk about the Women's March. All right, the Women's March happened earlier this week. Man, it was colder than the devil's heart outside while those women was marching. I salute everybody who was there. The leadership of the Women's March came under fire, and there was a bunch of smears. And I definitely need to talk about how the Women's March, the women's leaders went to The View, and Meghan McCain and others were trying to throw shade at Tamika Mallory and Bob. I can't think of Bob's last name.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't think of her last name. But it's Tamika Mallory that I want to speak on. Now, they're trying to play guilt by association because Tamika Mallory's been an activist for 20 years, and she's been a black activist in the black community, and she's had done events and has organized with people from the Nation of Islam and Dr. Louis Farrakhan. Dr. Louis Farrakhan is a divisive figure, even though he's not even though he's not in politics, even though he's not in the House of Representatives. He is a political figure, and he's divisive. He has said very anti-Semitic and homophobic things, and people was putting that guilt on Tamika like she was the one that said these things coming out of her mouth, which is upsetting because she has not. The platform of the Women's March is inclusive to all women, no matter your sexual identity or gender, no matter your religion. If you look at their platform, they want equality of opportunity. They want equality of justice. They want to raise all women up. And it's not just we're going to fight against Trump, because the same oppression of white supremacy and patriarchy that's affecting women in this country affects everyone in this country. That's why if you look at their platform was pretty progressive, and I was happy about it. This is the issue that I have. Well, I have 3 issues. One, when Tamika Mallory was asked to denounce Dr. Louis Farrakhan, I think that, in my opinion, I'm just going to say my opinion, I think it's really messed up that a black man is going to try to tell a woman what she should say. That's crazy. Like, if you want to think about it, because, dog, yeah. Here's the thing. If I was her, I would have said the same thing that Dr. Cornel West has said when it comes to Dr. Louis Farrakhan. That I denounce my brother. I denounce my brother's words, but I do not denounce my brother. I denounce the things that he said in that context and how it hurts people because it's counterproductive to the things that I am fighting for. Would have laid out the things that I'm fighting for, but I do not denounce my brother. The reason why is because Tamika Mallory follows the same logic as Dr. Martin Luther King. We fight systems of oppression. We have debates with people who we disagree with. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the Nation of Islam, if you've been a black activist in America, you've had to deal with the Nation of Islam, and you've had to interact with them when it comes to fighting against gun violence, mm-hmm. or tutoring and or mentorships. When it comes to like My Brother's Keeper Initiative and those type of things. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the disenfranchised, marginalized people, they are helped by people like the Nation of Islam. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that if I was Tamika Mallory, I would have said, all right, those statements that he said about being anti-Semitic and being homophobic, I do not agree with. I don't speak like that. I've never spoken like that. That's not my lane. Number 2, trying to play guilt by association because she's worked with them is a BS way of framing an argument, and it's a smear job because those are not the words that came out of her mouth. She has never advocated for the things that he said, and just because she's organized and worked with him does not mean that she believes in the same things he believes in. We just got done trashing Rand Paul. Rand Paul wants to get out of the wars overseas. He's anti-interventionist, and he wants to legalize, tax, and regulate drugs in America. I'm all for that. Since I'm all for that, that doesn't mean that I'm also for his version of healthcare, which he says that universal healthcare is slavery.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, I think this... what I think this really boils down to, and I want to hone in also, Linda Sarsour, another one of the big women's march organizers, had a lot of anti-Semitic criticisms leveled against her. Ostensibly, the same tried and true things like, I'm critical of Israel, so that means you must be anti-Semitic. Debbie Wasserman Schultz actually made a big public brouhaha about how she was boycotting the women's march this year, specifically calling out Linda Sarsour and Tamika Mallory. And here's what I think it really speaks to with me is they will bring up this guilt by association to try to discredit progressives who are always on point when it comes to policy. Here's the hypocrisy. They don't see it as a two-way street. So these kind of centrist liberals will call them out for being anti-Semitic, which really just means she's critical of Israel, or for not full-throatedly denouncing somebody like Louis Farrakhan, but somebody like Debbie, and ostensibly, the people who that represents, it's didn't you rig a primary for a war criminal? Are we not allowed to talk about the bad associations on your side, or even call those people out on their bad actions?
That's my third part. Yeah. It was Meghan McCain trying to tell her to denounce somebody. When you have a white woman, trying to tell a black woman who she needs to be denouncing. When her husband funds an alt-right news organization, her father said outrageous racist stuff against Asian people and Latino people, and she supports Donald Trump.
Yeah.
If you don't get Andy, get your cousin. Okay,
take the worst thing Louis Farrakhan ever said. Now take John McCain joking about bombing Iran. That's a magnitude worse because he was actually in a position of power to make that happen, and he was brazenly joking about a war that would have killed thousands, maybe like hundreds of thousands of innocent people.
John McCain voted against making MLK a national holiday multiple times.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he did.
Are you going to denounce your own dad?
Yeah.
Like, if that was, again, I'm happy that Tamika Mallory, when she was on The View, passed that question over to Bob, because you could see it on Tamika. Mallory. She was like, "Get your cousin." Like that was her said. That's her pulling. That was her pulling me talking when I talk to you and to you and Luke. And I'm like, "Dog, get your cousins. Get your cousins." Yeah. No, but this is the thing though. If you're a black activist, again, I can't stress that enough. I cannot think of a black activist that has been in the black community that has not interacted or did some organization with the Nation of Islam. Mm-hmm. I cannot think of, and just because I'm going to be doing some work with someone does not mean that I believe in the same things that they believe in. Martin Luther King sat down with Elijah Muhammad during the whole civil rights movement. That doesn't mean that he was believing the same thing that Elijah Muhammad did. Elijah Muhammad created the Nation of Islam, but they sat together in the same room because they still had to talk strategy about how to move forward. Martin Luther King sat with X. They had massive disagreements on certain issues, especially when it came to nonviolence versus armed protests. Yeah. They had a huge disagreement on that. But they also united on principles that they need to fight together because, again, the philosophy is we fight systems of oppression. We have disagreements with people we have debates with people that we disagree with. And that is the strategy of how productive organizations work.
Mm-hmm. All right, yeah. So with that, let's talk a little bit about some primary updates. So last week we spent some time talking about Tulsi Gabbard, the good and the bad. Hold on, yeah. And this week we want to focus on Kristen Gillibrand and Kamala Harris. Kamala actually announced on what was it? Monday.
Announced on
Monday.
No, she announced on Martin Luther King Day.
And then Kristen, I think she announced about a week ago.
Yeah, she announced earlier in the week.
Yeah.
And Kristen Gillibrand okay, both of these ladies got some problems. Mm-hmm. Both of these ladies got some good things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They are. I'm not gonna lie and say that both of these ladies are some Johnny-come-latelys. You've heard.
Yeah, we joked last week on the show. It's like, oh, they became progressive like last Tuesday.
Dog, like no, it's like that's. But this is the thing. Like we have railed on Kamala Harris on this show multiple times. I definitely have because her record as a prosecutor has been spotty to say the least. Yeah. But again, you got to give credit to where credit is due. She's when she did go after the big banks. And when she did go after big banks as a senator, I was happy about it. And her almost universal basic health care bill, the tax credit universal basic income monthly thing, I have no problem with. It is basically, for those who do not know, it's a tax credit that you will get monthly. Basically, you'll get $500 if you're working. Basically, if you're working, you'll get $500 monthly for everyone who makes $100,000 or less a year. Mm-hmm. Now, for those who are not good at math, only 20% of the country makes more than $100,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Only 20%, and the richest, that might actually be higher now since we just found out that 26 of the richest people in the world own just as much wealth as half the planet.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So yeah.
And I think I will give credit. Like, she's been very outspoken in the last 2 seasons. A lot more combative against the current administration than a lot of other establishment Democrats. I think a couple things to worry about is like there is this sense that maybe she's the establishment's anointed candidate. She has had meetings with Wall Street people. She's had meetings with
it's not just her.
Democratic consultants.
No, it's not just her.
Yeah.
Everyone Even Elizabeth Warren, I got mad about this. Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and Kristen Gillibrand all went to Wall Street to see if all went to Wall Street.
So, I mean, I know
did the
they
Wall Street
all
dance.
Kissed the ring. I think she, in particular, she did it probably earlier than the other candidates did, because I remember we were talking about this fairly early last year. But that is a good point to bring up. It's like she's not the only one out there kissing the ring.
Yeah, and that's they are all even though they're not taking corporate PAC money or super PAC money. They're still taking large donor money, and that's the issue. And for those who do not know, large donor money is how you could have one of those. Hillary Clinton used to do those things all the time. They have a large banquet of mega rich donors. They all give the maximum contribution. So if you had 20 rich donors that gave $2,500, that's that can make up the difference as much as a super PAC.
I know it made a big splash. How Kamala made over $1 million since her announcement, and I mean something you do got to keep in mind is Kamala's from California. She's the AG there. She's got a president. She was the AG. She is a senator there now. She's got a lot of connections. California is basically the deep-pocketed epicenter of liberal democratic politics in America. So the idea that she could make that much money that quickly really isn't that surprising, and I don't think it really is a good gauge of her grassroots support. I don't know if you'd agree with that or not, Lawrence,
my thing is this. A majority of the money that these candidates make, the ones that we just got done saying, outside of Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, even the Latino dude who said he has an exploratory committee,
Julian Casablancas.
Yeah, Julio Castro.
Castro. Sorry.
If you go on Open Secrets and look at where they get their money from. If you go online and look at where they get their money from, overwhelming majority of their money comes from large donors. Only 20% or lower actually comes from small money donors. Compare that to someone like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, a majority of the money that he makes or get. Over 70, last time I checked, it was 78% of his money comes from small donors. He does take big donors because he has friends like Rosario Dawson and others that will give him a maximum contribution. But an overwhelming majority of his money comes from small money donations. That means that he's not corrupted by big money donations the same way that the others are. He cannot be as influenced as the others can be.
That's true.
And that's the major issue between these candidates, because they have not come out they have not advocated for getting money out of politics. They haven't. They have not advocated for it. As soon as they advocate to get money out of politics, then they will be higher on my hierarchy. But Kristen Gillibrand, she supported the anti-boycott, the Divestments and Sanctions Act that Congress was trying to pass through. Basically, if you support boycotts, divestments, and sanctions, the government can crack down on you. She wanted to make that into law nationally. So that literally goes against the First Amendment of America that we have. You're going to tell me who I can or cannot protest. So the whole taxation without representation thing, you know how the country got started by boycotting? You're telling me that you're telling me that the same thing that we did to start this country, the same thing that we did, that we participated in when South Africa had an apartheid state, we can't do that when our ally is literally forcing people who lives in the Gaza Strip to live within a apartheid state type of system. That is not my language. The former minister of Israel said that. The person who had the job before Bibi Netanyahu said that the Gaza Strip was like a apartheid state. But you want to crack down on people who doesn't want to give their money to Israel. Kristen, dog, I can't deal with you. I can't deal with you. Both of them recently, they were asked. Trump, our President 45 wants to pull out of Syria, I think he pulled out of Afghanistan. They asked Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Kristen Gillibrand, Cory Booker, and I think one other candidate. Only Bernie Sanders and the other person who I can't think of actually.
Tulsi?
No, it wasn't Tulsi. It was somebody else. Only Bernie Sanders and I think either Ben Jealous or something. I think it was Ben Jealous that they asked, was that the right thing to do? Everyone else did not give an answer. Bernie Sanders gave a political, and he's like, yes, we should draw out, but we need to make sure we have some caveats for the Kurds, but we need to lessen our troops in overseas because we shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah. Don't forget, our occupation in Syria is illegal by international law.
Our 8 interventions are illegal by our laws, by not just international laws, but by American standard. So you have the fact that they're so politically calculated that they couldn't even get the answer about should we be in foreign interventions that are illegal by our standards. Makes me question, do they actually care about these issues, or are they trying to figure out what's the right thing to say? That's another reason why I'm like, nah, I don't trust these folks. Another issue. Kristen Gillibrand supported Hillary Clinton during 2016. She had an A rating from the NRA.
Yeah.
And she went after Bernie Sanders vociferously, saying that he had a problem when it comes to gun rights because of him voting, because of his record with the NRA, when she had an A rating.
Yeah, I do want to mention that is a big distinction between Kamala and Kristen. Because Kamala's track record as a senator, the way that she's voted, it's been a transition from kind of center to center left to progressive, whereas Kristen went from the right wing of the Democratic Party to progressive. Imagine if
she was a blue dog Democrat.
She was the female Joe Manchin for much of her career, and so it is. She's going to have a lot of votes coming back to bite her. I think Kamala, her Achilles heel is going to be her record as AG in California. Here's the biggest.
We have talked about that before.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that resurfaced to me is, and something that's been coming up a lot, is how she's dealt with mass incarceration and the war on drugs. So this one specific quote that I think is going to dog her from now to the end of the primary, no matter how it turns out, is her saying we need to keep enough prisoners in prison in order to maintain the labor pool.
Oof. Oh no! It's not just that. She locked up more drug dealers and nonviolent drug offenses, and she only became an advocate to legalize drugs in 2018.
Yeah.
So 4 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. And what's really dangerous about that is under the Trump administration, we've actually been seeing some moves to put mass incarceration in check.
No,
but I don't give that administration credit for that. That was grassroots organizers who did that. But this could put us in a situation where, say, Kamala wins, Trump, if he's politically agile enough, could actually punch at her from the left when it comes to issues of mass incarceration.
No.
Nuts,
the other issue with Kamala is that's going to bite her in the ass when it comes back up. She didn't prosecute Steve Mnuchin. She cracked down on brown and black people all the time, and she advocated for civil asset forfeiture laws. She advocated for police cameras to not be on police officers because she was taking police union money. But she did not prosecute Steve Mnuchin. So on soft color crime, on low color crime, when it comes to people of color, she was all over. When it came to someone committing fraud and kicking families out of their houses, and she knew that they were doing so, and she did not prosecute him or One West Bank, but then took donations from him, that's going to be her major Achilles heel. Now,
so we're at 8. So I just I want you to finish out thoughts on Kamala and Kristen, and then we'll probably end up in the show. But please,
okay.
Ahead.
So when it comes to my hierarchy of people who have announced, for me, my hierarchy is Elizabeth Warren's number 1, Tulsi Gabbard's number 2, Richard Ojeda's number 3, Richard Ojeda, Kamala Harris, and Tulsi Gabbard. They're all fighting for 3, 4, and 5.
And we'll have to talk about Ojeda next week. I don't think we've actually covered him yet.
Ojeda has some problems too.
Yeah,
like you can't vote for Romney over Obama, and then start. He has transformed. He has transformed. He's as a political activist. He has done a lot of good, and he's for getting money out of politics. Like, he's really for Wolfpack. He advocated for Wolfpack in West Virginia. So there's some problems in his record, but I'm definitely happy that he's in the race. He's going to be the attack dog for Bernie Sanders.
All right, and any other thoughts about Kamala or Kristen?
Okay. This is the thing, because we've had this. We was having this argument on Facebook earlier. We're having 2 different conversations. Would they be better than Trump? Yes, they would be. They would be far. They are light years better than Trump. But we're talking about the primary. There are other candidates that are more progressive than them. There are other candidates that have a better track record than them. So, since we have a better track record, that's the conversation that we are having.
All right. I want to thank y'all for listening. This has been the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. Keep your dial locked every week, 6 to 8, and we also upload our episodes on YouTube after the fact. Until next time, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.